Ladies and gentlemen, as the summer has now fully taken over here in the seasons, as we get ever so close to American football, and as we are very close, it is the 4th of July weekend. So as it is the most American of holiday weekends, ladies and gentlemen, we bring you the podcast that covers the most American sport there is to the best of the host abilities. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, the weekend tradition that is sweeping the podcast nation, at least we like to believe. It is the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, coming back for episode 4 of our divisional breakdowns across the NFL. We're going to go week by week, division by division, give you our thoughts, our analysis, our breakdown on each team, and of course, our predictions, and for some of the guys, one being too lazy, aka me, the records that we have for the teams for the upcoming 2022 season that will culminate with us giving our full playoff picture. As always, one of your hosts, Iceman Jared, with you. Now, as you can see, it's only 2 of us this week. Our guy, Justin, he's incognito. He is incapacitated this week. He is taking his paid vacation time off. It's his turn this week to be away. But don't you fret, ladies and gentlemen, because there are still 2 of us. And to be fair, as much as I love the show, I don't know if I could do the podcast all by myself. I think that would be a challenge. But I always have with me one of the amazing gentlemen that I work with. And this man in particular, the podfather of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast himself, Rick. Rick, how are we doing with your special guest?
I think we're doing okay. I mean, I'm not this. This, by the way, is my driver head cover. This is Sandoval. He's currently being held up by a lint brush, if you will. So there you go, just in case.
There we go.
In case I ever want to get into ventriloquism, that'll be my little fun gag there.
I saw Sandoval before the show. I didn't ask because I want you to share the story. How did Sandoval come to be? I'm very curious about it.
I literally bought him at a PGA Tour Superstore, and because I needed a new driver cover, and so that was pretty much it. It's one of the things where it was like I could have just bought a regular driver cover, like I have like USA, American flag, wood covers, but I needed something that stand out a little bit, and so that kind of just brought him out, and then decided the name of Sandoval because he's a big moose, big elk, big deer, likes to eat, and so put him on the driver. Big dog likes to eat. There you go.
Nice. Was there, if you can remember, were there any other ones that came close? Like, was there a second option, or was
there were a couple of runner-ups. There was a gator that was a good option. That would have been pretty interesting. There was a bulldog, and then for some reason I think there was a Dracula one as well. But I thought that would be too on the nose because that almost reminded me of the Count from Sesame Street, and I didn't want to go to every hole and announce one tee shot. I don't want to do that. So.
Oh man, yeah. The thing is, you gotta, and life lesson for all the people that are watching us. When it comes to decisions like that, if you're going to commit to something, and if it has a bit to it, you commit to the bit. If you had picked the vampire, you would have had to do that every single time you go first tee shot for the rest of your life.
Oh yeah, and since I've had Sandoval, I've probably been on like 10 or 11 rounds of golf. At least maybe. When I was with my prior company, we would go out every Monday. So basically that was like, every single Monday. So all the guys that I knew every single Monday. So that'd be every guy who heard the same thing on the Monday every single time. Yeah, no good.
I'm just now personally imagining you doing that every single time. And it's both, to me, entertaining to hear you do that. And I also feel like at some point, even I would feel bad for you. It's like, man, he is committed, but it's a lot.
It's as glorious as it is terrifying. That's the best way I can put it. So, which is a preview for what's coming up at the end of the show.
Oh, absolutely. That's a very good tag. It's one of the many taglines. We're compiling a list of taglines, ladies and gentlemen. If you have any to describe the show or any part of the show, feel free to comment it. Of course, please. we're more than willing. We'll actually, for the fun of it, because we always have a little lower ticker, we will start putting some taglines if we start getting them as submissions in the comments. So if you have that. Yeah, if you have a funny way to describe the show or describe a segment of the show, because we have our usual games, feel free to comment it, and it will be featured on. Because we're here, like I've always said, we're here for the fun, we're here for the football, and we're here for the chaos.
Of course,
that's what the show's all about. Yes. So speaking of fun, football, chaos, ladies and gentlemen, even though Justin is not here, he did leave us a little trinket from the heavens of the mountaintops of Pennsylvania. He has given us a NFL Would You Rather that me and Rick will get into here in a little bit. And of course, after that, we have like I said, on the top of the show, we're going to be going over the NFC North this time. We went over the AFC North last week. If you want to catch up, we've done the AFC South, NFC South, and AFC North so far on the YouTube channel. So you guys can go back if you want any analysis there. If you're a fan of any of those teams and you want to hear how we talked about your team, some more glowingly than others, you can go back and listen to that and what our thoughts on the divisions were at the end of it. And the same thing's going to happen in this episode. We're going to go over the NFC North, go over team by team, and then we're going to give our standings at the end. And also at the end of the show, the main event segment of the show, I'm booking this as the main event every single time I can. It's going to be Rick's usual review / rant of the week. I think we're, once again, ladies and gentlemen, no idea what it's going to be about. This is the beauty of it. We specifically tell Rick that we don't want to know. We want him to catch us by surprise, so it's going to be a fun time this week. And we're going to have that. But, and even though he's not here, he wasn't able to supply us with a trivia question this week. So I did a little bit of work on my own. I did a little bit of research.
Did you? Okay.
Yes. And Rick, I have a trivia question this week, actually. And it ties back, actually, to a conversation that we had previously on the show.
Okay, well, listen. Before you do anything, you know, if somebody's going to ask a trivia question, there's got to be two people who can answer it. So we're back. We're ready.
Yes.
Let's go.
This is the payoff I've been waiting for, ladies and gentlemen. Yep. So, previous conversation we had, a would you rather from the past was between Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase, Rick. Now, we know both of them are supremely talented. Now, Justin Jefferson is entering year 3 of his career. Jamar Chase is entering year 2. Now, this question is more directed to Justin Jefferson right now, but it will eventually be tied to Jamar Chase. Most receiving yards by a receiver in the first 3 seasons of their career. So far, Justin Jefferson has 3,016 yards in the first 2 years of his career. Very good start for him. Jamar Chase in his rookie season, 1,455. So they're both off to electric starts. In the first 3 seasons of a wide receiver's career, 2 wide receivers have gone over 4,000 yards within the first 3 years of their career receiving-wise. Justin Jefferson has a more than fair shot to A, easily get to 4,000, but B, become the new leader in that category as well. And Jamar Chase will probably have that opportunity in the 2023 season as well. So with those two in mind, let's go to their predecessors. Rick, who are the only 2 wide receivers in NFL history to have 4,000 plus receiving yards in the first 3 years of their career?
4,000 receiving yards in the first 3 seasons of their career.
Yes, you get first. You get first crack, then Sandoval does.
Okay. First 3 seasons, so they had to have an immediate impact on the game as soon as they came in to the fold. So that's, to me, that's where you're talking about. You got to look at number 1 receivers across the way. While I'm tempted to think about a guy like a Marvin Harrison, who could possibly be a guy, I'm thinking maybe a little older for my first guess. I mean, do I get, like, how many of these guesses do I get? 3, 2, 1, 2 each, 3 each?
I'd say 3 each.
Okay. So I'm thinking about a guy who may be a little on the older side, but somebody who I think might have had a good start to his career. And so I'm going to go with a name that's probably not as familiar as you would think, but I'm going to go with, I just had it, Amani Toomer. That's what I'm going to go with first. Giants.
He's not at 4,000 yards in his first couple of seasons. In fact, actually looking, so I have, at least I want to say this is probably the top 12 to 15 I have immediately in front of me. I do not see him on that top 12 to 15. So
Okay. That's fine.
So
that's fine.
Sandoval, your first guess, my friend.
Okay. So I'm speaking for, obviously, the deer.
Of course. I mean, you are the translator. You are.
Yes. So Sandoval has mentioned that deer like grass.
Yes.
What's another word for grass? Moss. And so Sandoval is going to go with Randy Moss.
Sandoval is 100% correct. That is the number 1 player on the list with the most receiving yards through the first 3 seasons of his career is Randy Moss. 4,163 for Randy Moss in the first 3 years of his career. Excellent guess, Sandoval.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay. Don't show off. It's unbecoming of you. Okay.
Yes. So Randy Moss is number 1 of the guys. It makes sense, really. I mean, Rick, you can attest to it more than most people. Like, Randy Moss was the definition of immediate impact the second he came into the league.
Right. Okay.
So now your next guess. So like I said, 2 players have gotten at least 4K in their first 3 seasons. So who is the other one? If you need if both you and Sandoval can't get it after this one, I will give you guys a hint.
Okay. Something to me sticks into the 2000s still. Like I like the older receivers because I think they made a bigger impact. But you know what? I thought about it. I guess Toomer didn't, because when Amani Toomer came into the league, the Giants quarterback situation wasn't really that great, I feel like. But something tells me the Rams quarterback situation was really good when their receivers started to come into the league. So I'm going to go, my guess here, I'm going to go with Torrey Holt.
It is a good guess,
Yeah.
but just off the mark. Torrey Holt had 3,786 receiving yards in the first 3 years of his career. Excellent guess, because he came in at the right time.
Darn.
Amazing.
Yeah, I thought that would have been better. Yeah, but I'm not upset about that, because, like I said, Toomer was kind of a throwaway, but Holt I thought was a little bit better. But okay.
Without question. If you're going guys who had fast starts,
well, because I mean, it could have been Torrey Holt or Isaac Bruce. That would have been my thought. But yeah, Torrey Holt I thought had a little bit better of a start to his career. Bruce is more of longevity purposes.
Yeah, for sure. So it's not Torrey Holt. So Sandoval, your guess for the second one, the other wide receiver who got at least 4,000 receiving yards in the first 3 years of his career. Is he nibbling the side of your face while he translates to you?
Well, no, because I have the headphone in, obviously, so he's got to get through the headphone to tell me. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Oh, that's the universal sign for he was crazy, but yeah. So keeping up with this theme of farm and grass and all of that, one of the Sandoval's favorite little nursery rhyme songs was called "The Farmer in the Dell," and so Sandoval is going to guess Odell, Odell Beckham Jr.
I love it. Sandoval, you are extremely smart, my man. Dogs may be man's best friend, but I think Sandoval's is this podcast's best friend. Sandoval is right. Odell Beckham Jr. is the other wide receiver with 4,000 receiving yards within the first 3 years of his career. That is 100% correct.
Sandoval's very happy, and he's going to retire from the show now because he's served his purpose.
Perfect. That's perfect, because little mini extension of the trivia, but not critical that you have to get this, Rick, but I did this just for fun. So it's funny when you mentioned Torrey Holt, because he's actually 5th most receiving yards through a player's first 3 seasons. So we got Randy Moss, who's first, we got Odell, who's second, and we got Torrey Holt at 5th.
Yeah.
Can you give me who 3rd and 4th are on that list? You don't have to, you guys already succeeded.
No. I mean, I'll definitely take a stab at it. So obviously my thought process then is that, my older guesses are probably null and void, because, now we're probably going to the newer form of it. So, he's been an explosive. Michael Thomas is probably, I would say, up there.
Yes, he is number 4.
Okay.
So Torrey Holt, 3,786. Michael Thomas, 3,787.
Of course.
By 1.
Yeah. And then, what's funny? Like, I guess to me, when I'm thinking about receivers, I'm thinking about, what starts the career. You forget how Cincinnati was with Carson Palmer as the quarterback. You really do. I mean, they were a very prolific offense, and Carson Palmer could sling the ball around better than anybody else. So his number 1 was AJ Green. So I think AJ Green's got to be in the top 5.
So AJ Green is number 3.
Yeah.
But AJ Green and Carson Palmer actually never got to play with each other.
Well, the correlation of Cincinnati was there, at least for me.
For sure. I mean, I think Carson Palmer, if he had stayed, so little history corner real quick for the people. And trust me, ladies and gentlemen, now that I've said it, history corner is going to become a segment on the show at some point. But Carson Palmer, Rick, and I think you probably remember some of the finer details of it a little bit more than me, but Carson Palmer, he had wanted out of Cincinnati. I forget what the result of his last season there was, but they were not good. I'm pretty confident saying that I want to say they missed the playoffs his last season he played there. And he was getting frustrated with the organization for whatever reasons at that point, because they had some success. They made the playoffs a couple times with him and Chad Ochocinco leading the way. But they had missed the playoffs and he was done. And he essentially retired to get out of playing for them.
I mean, yeah.
He had committed to retiring, which is just absolutely insane. And that is what pushed them. So they drafted AJ Green in the first round. And because Carson Palmer, I don't know if either he kept telling them he was just going to stay retired or if he had just stopped contact with the team. But because of that, Carson Palmer's situation led to them drafting Andy Dalton in the second round.
Oh, okay.
So
that makes sense.
That was quite the whole thing. I remember that because not the first Madden I had, but the Madden I played the most growing up was the Madden with Peyton Hillis on the cover. And I remember because and
you want to talk about a player that did that really got bit by the Madden curse?
Yeah,
Peyton Hillis.
Yeah, and also the Cleveland Browns curse.
Of course, yeah, absolutely. And follow-up trivia bonus question for you because I did a little bit of research on it. What quarterback threw AJ Green's first career touchdown reception?
I'm trying to think who's the backup quarterback on Cincinnati now. Because I mean, you're asking this for a reason. It's definitely not Andy Dalton.
It's not Andy Dalton, no, of course.
So I'm trying to think who's the backup quarterback on that Cincinnati Bengals roster.
Well, let me give you a hint. This quarterback got signed for a 2-year deal by the Bengals from the team where they traded Carson Palmer.
So they sent him to the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
So this guy played on the Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just trying to think of bad Raiders quarterbacks. Wait, no, it couldn't have been him. I don't think he was ever a Bengal. No, he wasn't a Bengal either. Why am I thinking of of guys who never played for the Bengals?
I don't really know. I don't really know
because the first 3 names that popped in my head, I'm like, wait, no, I know they never played for Cincinnati. Why am I thinking of them?
They didn't. Nope, wasn't him.
Oh God. Raiders quarterbacks. I mean, it would be funny if it was Jamarcus Russell, but we know it's not.
It's not. Yeah, but that would be great. No. Do you want the giveaway hint?
Sure. The
finest football player to ever come out of Toledo University.
Toledo. That screams a joke in my head from my younger days. Jesus, why am I not getting this name? I'm gonna be so frustrated when you tell me the name because it's still not screaming to me. No, I can't. I can't. The name is not coming to me. I'm upset.
He wasn't rad, but he was grad. Bruce Gradkowski.
Oh my God!
And Dalton started week 1, but then they took him out, or he got hurt, or whatever the case was. But he threw a touchdown pass to Jermaine Gresham. It was in like the 3rd or 4th quarter that Gradkowski came in and threw a 41-yard touchdown pass to AJ Green to win the game for Cincinnati against Cleveland. So there you go. Battle of Ohio. Battle of Ohio in 2010. Bruce Gradkowski from Toledo.
Who was the Browns quarterback? That's the question.
Do we really want to know this? Yeah, we'll go for it.
Why wouldn't we want to know this?
Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we go for it? Absolutely.
20?
It was 2011.
2011 Browns quarterback.
Okay. Yep. Okay.
Just tell the people.
So the 3 quarterbacks on their roster were Duke product Thaddeus Lewis.
Oh, wow.
Iowa State's finest Seneca Wallace.
Of course.
And the starting quarterback who they drafted, I believe, the year before or 2 years prior, Colt McCoy.
Oh.
Yeah.
My God.
Yep. It was a rough time in football in Ohio for those 2 franchises.
God, it's still kind of a rough time when you think about it.
Well, yeah, I mean that's true.
Lovely.
By the way, when I was looking up AJ Green stuff, I saw another report that said that Milwaukee signed AJ Green to a 2-year deal, and I was like, Milwaukee. Apparently, there was a basketball player in Northern Iowa also named AJ Green who went undrafted, and he got signed by the Milwaukee Bucks. Totally different guy from the wide receiver AJ Green.
I was about to say, is like AJ Green switching careers here? Is he going to?
Could you imagine AJ Green and Giannis Antetokounmpo on the same roster?
A prime AJ Green would have. I honestly, I think a prime AJ Green would put up some buckets.
Oh yeah,
You give him a
He
full
would
training
have
camp and a full preseason, I think he gets like 8 to 10 points a game.
move over Dante DiVincenzo. It's AJ Green's time.
Shout out to DiVincenzo signing with the Warriors, by the way.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Good for him. He's going to get a championship for sure.
For sure.
Another one actually, because he was on that Bucks championship team. So stacking up rings. So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this trivia for the weekend, as it says on the lower ticker, hosted by me this week. But it's still Justin's trivia. It is still, we keep his namesake because he is forever the trivia host with the most.
Well, yeah, I mean, every game show host has laryngitis or, has a vacation, and they have either, syndicated episodes or somebody else host for a week, that sort of thing. So
exactly. And speaking of hosting for a week, the other game that we have, NFL Would You Rather, this one directly from Justin, like I said, from the mountains of Pennsylvania, where he was able to drop this to us before he probably lost his service or turned his phone off. Probably
or is now churning butter with the Amish.
Maybe that.
Yeah.
But telling them all about our show, though, is this week's Would You Rather. We have 3 Would You Rather questions. I, of course, am going to be a part of it as well. So
yes,
there's that. We have 3 interesting Would You Rather questions. We have one that has to deal with playing international games. We have another playoff question, very similar to one that he had asked us a couple weeks ago with like the Saints and Vikings, and another one about receivers. Let's just keep with the theme here, Rick, and let's stay with the wide receivers. I think this is actually a pretty interesting one. Whose receiving core would you rather have, Rick? I'll give you the first crack at this one.
Okay.
The Philadelphia Eagles or the Miami Dolphins?
Oh, okay. Okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
This is very interesting. I think for me, when I'm looking at the 2 groups together, because we're talking about just the wide receiver core, right? We're not talking about like the situational of where they are.
I think the idea of the question is you can pick whoever quarterback you want. You just which receiving course talent do you want to have?
Yeah. Because here's the thing, like they both kind of equal each other out in a way. If you really think about it, like AJ Brown equals Tyreek Hill, Devontae Smith equals Jalen Waddle. Even like Greg Ward can equal Lynn Bowden because they were both college quarterbacks that are now playing wide receiver. So it kind of evens out in a way. I'll be honest, like for me, like I'm a guy who would prefer to have a little more height to my main target. I mean, so for me, I would go Philadelphia over Miami. I think Philadelphia's core group is a little bit better in some ways. And I think, if all things are being equal, I like having Devontae Smith over Jalen Waddle. I think it's a little bit better. I don't think you can go wrong with either. The one flaw that I have in taking Philadelphia is that I have to settle myself with Jalen Reagor,
right?
And I will swallow that pill and bite that bullet because I feel like I can kind of maneuver around Jalen Reagor and be okay in some regard. I mean, granted, the guy did muff 2 punts in the wild card round against Tampa last year, so don't put him as my punt returner. But I mean, again, the way the wide receiver game has changed now, you can run jet sweeps and you can run all of that. But it seems to me like Philadelphia has a better plan for its lower receivers, like it's Britton Covey's, it's Greg Ward's, than Miami does for the guys that are below Tyreek Hill and Cedric Wilson. Like I don't really know what they've done with Lynn Bowden, I can't really say. And then Cody Core and Devontae Dedmon don't really strike me as anybody that's exciting. So I think overall and talent-wise, the depth of it gives me Philadelphia. I think the talent's even, but the depth, I go with Philadelphia more.
Interesting. I have similar reasoning to you, but I'm actually going to go the other way. I'm going to go with the Miami Dolphins here.
Okay.
Because I think because they've been used in the past, I think Preston Williams and Cedric Wilson Jr. are both extremely, I think they're underrated depth receivers. I think it was a great pickup by Miami to pick up Cedric Wilson. I think Preston Williams has been good. I forget if last season it was because of injury or just like the offense was screwing up. But again, with what the coaching situation, what the offensive situation has been there the last couple of years, I think there's reasoning for it. I think Preston Williams and Cedric Wilson are both great, like 3s and 4s behind Tyreek Hill, and the potential that Jalen Waddle has. And again, with Jalen Waddle, I think like just his ceiling can be really good, and I think that they'll be able to get a lot out of him. And at the end of the day, and very similar to you, I think with Tyreek Hill and AJ Brown, you have a number one receiver on each side. It's really a pick your poison. I'm gonna go with, because I've seen Tyreek Hill do it for a longer stretch right now. I'm gonna give my advantage to Tyreek Hill because I just think his speed is just otherworldly. Like it's almost not fair sometimes what he's able to do with his speed. So
True.
I would give that edge to them. And at the end of the day, I mean, you actually brought up this name, wide receiving core. They have Cody Core, so I have to go with the team that has the name Core on it as well. So
it's actually smart too that you're going with Miami, because if you look at their wide receiver coaches, there's a total difference in philosophy and a total difference in prowess. Philadelphia's wide receiving coach is Aaron Moorhead, who I think only caught maybe 30 balls in his NFL career. You know who Miami's wide receiver coach is? Wes Welker.
There you go.
I mean, that kind of seals the deal right there. Which I hated Wes Welker as a player because he was on the Patriots, but man, the guy. To be fair, honestly, the guy created Tyreek Hill's position. I feel like the slot receiving position was Wes Welker's, and then became Julian Edelman's, and then all these teams finally caught up to it, and then Tyreek Hill exploded onto the map.
Yeah.
So I feel like you want to pair the guy who's doing it the best now with the guy who started the trend. It makes sense for Miami to do it, but I won't change. Yeah, I won't change though. I'll stick with my Philadelphia.
For sure. I don't think you could go wrong. I think both sides have talent, and even if we wanted to include the tight ends as well, Dallas Goedert and Mike Gesicki, like I don't think you could go wrong with either of them either. So.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. And it's also then you go to the secondary and it's Adam Shaheen or Richard Rodgers. So I mean, you can't really go wrong with either one of them too. So
yeah, so you have a great all around. I specifically I kind of made it more about the receivers when I read it. But I mean, we could have also included the tight ends, but once again, like we just said, it Gesicki and Goddard both great tight ends. So
yeah,
you're not going wrong either way.
Right.
So next one, I mean, hey, we brought up his name. Let's go to a little convo about his former team. Who would you rather want to face in the playoffs, the Chiefs or the Bills? Now he does not specify if it's a home or away game.
Right.
So.
Right. That was my big thing, is that from last week the question was Minnesota or New Orleans, who was home, and obviously the Chiefs and the Bills could and probably would be. Although I'm not so sure about the Chiefs. I mean maybe because that division's a lot tougher this year. The AFC West is a lot tougher this year. The Bills, I think, are going to run away with the AFCs. I think there's no question about that. But so the question really is then who, and I think for me, I would rather face the Chiefs. I mean, I look at what Kansas City has lost and what they've recovered, in a way, and I'm still lacking a few things on their roster. I think that would really scare me in a way. Like I don't really see a number one. I mean, I know they have Juju Smith-Schuster. I know they just drafted Sky Moore, but it's not your Tyreek Hill. It's not your dangerous weapon. Whereas Buffalo didn't really lose anybody from their roster. I mean, they basically just revamped and re-added. And the fact of the matter is too that they also brought in Von Miller on a big contract on the defense. So they shored up their defense pretty significantly too. So they're I think a more complete all-around team than Kansas City is by the slimmest of margins. We saw that AFC title game between the two of them, and we saw it go down to the wire the way that it did. I think I could manage Patrick Mahomes if I really thought about it and really kind of took away those weapons. Of course, Kelsey can just run forever, fine, like have him have the field day, but I think for me, I would rather, because they just lost enough where now they're a little more tangible of an offense versus a Buffalo team that gained Gabriel Davis and they had him on his roster and he all of a sudden exploded. So I think for me, I would roll the dice against Kansas City more than Buffalo.
And I agree with you, actually. I would also rather face the Chiefs than the Bills. And it's not so much due to the offense. I think Patrick Mahomes, like if I'm a defensive coordinator and a defensive player, I would just have nightmares about Patrick Mahomes leading up to a playoff game in particular. Yeah. I think especially come the playoffs, I think they'll have like some stuff figured out there. But what my thing is with the Chiefs is that I think defensively is where you can really pick them apart. The pass rush, aside from Chris Jones, needs to step up. The linebacking core, I think, uh, they're a year better from last year. Like because they had a young player or two in that linebacking core last year. I think will be better. So it's actually kind of funny. You can kind of consider the linebacking core one of the better portions of this defense. When last year that wouldn't have been the case.
Right.
And the defensive backfield is going to be way too young. I know they did. I want to say they got a veteran of some sort, but for the most part, they're going to rely on like younger players. I think you could pick apart that defense a lot easier than you could have in years past, especially this playoff run. And I would go with that because I think you'd be able to attack that defense a lot and really put the pressure on the offense. And I think that would be the key thing. And maybe you could force Mahomes to make that mistake and get you that win because the defense was performing so poorly. So I would go with that for mainly that. And like I said, of course, the Bills, like I think I'm always going to put the Chiefs up there, but I think the Bills have a real shot. Like I think they should be a lot of people's favorites to come out the AFC this year because I think the Chiefs, this was a transition year for Kansas City. I think they're going to take the season to figure things out. I think you look at the other like potential division winners. I think a lot of people would take the Bills over quite a few of the teams. I think as of now, of course, and it's going to depend as we get closer to the season and as it goes. But I think the AFC right now looks like the Bills to lose on paper.
So I think too that the defensive front for Buffalo is just insane because you could have AJ Epinesa, you could have Shaq Lawson, and then you could go Greg Rousseau, Ed Oliver, and Carlos Basham. It's a sick defensive front. And I will tease this. I have Buffalo in my AFC title game. That's all I'm going to say about it.
Okay.
That's all I'm going to say about it.
Yeah. I like it. Well, it makes sense. Buffalo AFC title game returning there. A big time meaningful game. Speaking of meaningful games, Rick, would you rather play a meaningful game or a meaningless game in London? Now, I'll go with this one first because I'm assuming we're mainly just referring to regular season, of course.
Until they put the Super Bowl in London.
Yeah. That's probably going to happen one day. Let's be real.
I'd enjoy that.
Yes.
I'd enjoy that.
So I think for the NFL would like a meaningful game in London. I think there's two ways to attack this question. I think the NFL would like a meaningful game. I think they would love it if a division had to be on the line for a game in London. Like, even though they're facing early enough, so it won't be this season. But like, let's say Titans-Colts. If the last Titans-Colts game was in London and that was for the division, I think the NFL would love that because you could sell it to the people like you are going to see like guaranteed a playoff team. Like the winner is going to the playoffs. It adds stakes to it. I think for growing the game, I think stakes being attached, like it makes it more appealing to the people there. Because if you tell them this is important, someone's going to make the playoffs because of this game. Fans in London will flock to that. But if you're the players, you hate the possibility of a game that could have real stakes to it. And that's why I think the games happen so early on in the season as they do, because the players don't like these guys do not want to have their season, their playoff odds decided by having to go to a foreign country for an international game. They don't want that because of the travel time, because of the complete like reconfiguration of their body clock for that week. Like many factors, they would not want that. Like guys would rather go in the most hostile road environment possible to try to win their season than have to go for an international game. So I think if the players like meaningless all the way.
So I think the real problem though is that if you're the NFL from a monetary and from a view standpoint, you have to make the games as early as possible because Premier League soccer is still the big thing over in England. Now, to your point, Jared, when you said, fans will flock to a playoff game, they flock to a relegation game. If their team is 18th in the EPL standings and a win will get them into 17th and they will stay in the top tier league, they will go to that game and they will sing and cheer. But the thing is too and it's interesting. There's no meaningless game in EPL soccer or in any soccer over in England, or football, I should say, in England, because every game has a little tier point where that one game in August where your team loses 2-1 is the reason why you get relegated to the second tier. NFL should really look into relegation, I think, with the USFL and the XFL, make it like a joint thing. But to go to your point, I agree that I think the NFL wants to have a meaningful game over there at some point, but it's just not going to happen right now because there's just not enough traction for it from the NFLPA or from the fans over in England. Like yes, the fans will flock to the game, but at the same time, you're asking to sell out 75,000 seat Wembley Stadium or Tottenham Stadium, which they do on a regular basis. But keep in mind, the ticket prices are probably a lot different for a Tottenham Hotspur Aston Villa match than they are for a Jaguars Packers game. Because it's the NFL you're talking about. It's a lot more revenue sharing. It's a lot more money. Whereas these EPL teams, if they're not owned by big name guys who own stakes in the NFL franchises, they're owned by conglomerates of the fans, and they're owned by like the public sharing almost sort of thing. So I think we're not going to get away from that. I think a meaningful game over there, a Super Bowl would be lovely. A Pro Bowl would be lovely over in London. But I think that for the time being, it's going to be meaningless. It's going to continue to be meaningless, and it's going to stay that way for maybe the next 5 or 10 years. I think you could probably see a Super Bowl in Canada first before you see one in London. And they tried that in Buffalo. They had Buffalo play a few games in the Sky Dome, the International Series, I think it was. Toronto Argonauts are going to move out of the way, so it makes sense to kind of go there first. So, but I just think that, for London, it's a real goal. It's a pipe. You know what? Actually, honestly, I think you see one in Mexico first before you see one in London. I think that I think is the more palatable option, I would say, for the NFL to have the Super Bowl there, because the teams the stadiums that keep bidding for the Super Bowl, it's all just the same. It's all rotationary. It's all, and it's kind of to tangent a little bit. It's what they're doing in golf now with like the U.S. Open and the PGA Championship and the British Open. The British Open did it first, or the Open Championship, if you will. They rotate around like 5 or 6 different courses, in a given cycle. The U.S. Open's doing that now, and the PGA is doing that now. And I think that that's detrimental because you're going away from giving, other venues the chance to host a big tournament. Like when Erin Hills in Wisconsin hosted the PGA, I believe, it was insane because it was the first time it was like this new course. Chambers Bay in Washington hosted the U.S. Open, new course, first time hosting it. And you saw the Pacific Northwest. There was like the last hole at Chambers Bay where it was like a train track ran through behind the green. So you're setting up for a 150-yard shot into the green on the final hole of the U.S. Open, and there's a cargo train just like beep, beep coming through.
That's awesome.
It was a great view, really great view. So, but yeah, I to get back to it, I think it's going to be meaningless for now. I would love meaningful. I truly would, but it's going to be meaningless for now.
Right. And I'm with you. I don't think we'll ever see a meaningful regular season game played there, but I'm with you. I think like there could be a chance one day in the distant future that it would be maybe the Super Bowl could be hosted there. But I also think to your point, I think you bring it up is that the NFL's really been on, and I know there have been some exceptions here and there, but they've really been on a kick of like the new stadiums recently, but the warm cities being the hosts for the Super Bowls. Like you got LA, Vegas' stadium, of course. Miami has had it a couple times. Tampa, like they're going to give it to there, and if they're going to go to a quote unquote cold place, it's also going to be in the dome. So I think that would be another big part of it. Again, not to say it wouldn't work. I think London would be just an amazing, like the spectacle of the Super Bowl being there, I think would be something very special.
You realize Detroit hasn't hosted a Super Bowl in 17 years? And that's a perfect stadium to host a Super Bowl in, Ford Field. That is a perfect stadium for it. You talk about like the cold domes.
Was that the first Steelers Super Bowl under Big Ben, or was that the Colts Super Bowl that happened?
That was the Jerome Bettis Super Bowl. Yeah, that was Steelers Seahawks, which served as the inspiration for one of the all-time most underrated video games, NFL Head Coach. Because you started off as either the Steelers offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator who would get a job. So basically, you were Mike Tomlin at that point because Cowher retired, so you were Mike Tomlin.
Right.
So.
Nice. Hey, the NFL Head Coach Series, better than modern Madden. Just saying that right now, ladies and gentlemen.
Oh my God, so much better. Much better.
You want a football game that really more fun, more in depth, and will legitimately challenge you. Because like I've seen playthroughs of the game, and it's like if you legitimately perform poorly enough, you will get fired. Like it means you actually have to perform at your job. That's like you want a challenge. Like the NFL Head Coach Series is the one. The last one that they had I was about to say published out, but the last one that they had created and that sent out to the people, like looking back at it, it's a really good game.
Like it was the first real chance to have the NFL Wonderlic test in a video game in a way. So that was really because I guarantee you that people who play that game had never heard of the Wonderlic test beforehand, and now all of a sudden it's become almost like lexicon. It's
Right.
gospel now, basically. The only thing I can liken it to is the NCAA football games towards the very end of their run,
Yes.
when if you did create a player, you actually went to class and you took tests. I mean, granted, it was also like, I'm going to study college football logos, and it was a joke, but at the same time, like, you had
Fun.
some kind of an experience.
Yeah.
It,
Fun brain games there. I remember it wasn't the last NCAA game, but it was one of the last ones I had. It was the one with RG3 on the cover. When he was featured on the cover of it. And I remember making my quarterback and just having the absolute time of my life, just torching the high school level.
oh my god!
All the top Division 1 offers, all the top ones.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to remember where I went to. I want to say I didn't go to Alabama. I'm trying to think. You know what? I want to say I may have went to Texas.
I was because at the time my cousin had just graduated from Notre Dame, so I was a big Notre Dame guy. But there were times where I would take a creative player and I would start at like UAB or Central Michigan. I would go to like a lower tier school just to kind of like bring them to relevance. I think.
Yeah.
I think I actually won the Heisman 3 times at Cal of all places, and then Coach Cal the next year. I don't know. It was weird.
The long-term storytelling, the NCAA, old football games know how to do that, especially, by the way, with the old head coaching games. Like the scouting feature was just, and the contracts, like the structures and stuff, and like the promises. You also have to make promises to like your coordinators that you would hire, like they would get a certain amount of control. Oh, so good.
Yeah.
And there were so many players back then that are like super young, where it's like you can really mold guys to become something. Like Harry Douglas on the Falcons, you could turn him into an all-pro receiver if you develop him right. Aaron Rodgers is nothing in that game, but you can, as you can with the old Maddens, like you could take him and try to turn him into the Aaron Rodgers we see today.
So you could turn Harry Douglas into a Hall of Famer, not a third-rate ESPN commentator. Got it. Okay.
Yes.
Zing. Shot across the bow.
So as we go down memory lane, ladies and gentlemen, as we've had the fun nostalgia there, let's focus onto the future, the now, the NFC North. As part of the Sports Agents of Chaos NFL divisions breakdown that we have done, this is week 4 of 8 of the full divisions, and then of course the final week, our week 9. It will be us giving our full playoff pictures in it, and I guess we might take a step further. We might also just give our Super Bowl matchups right now as well, considering Rick gave us one of his AFC Championship game teams. So there's that. Right. But that's A, more down the line, and B, for us to plan, because we kind of, there's some planning that goes into this, but at the same time we're also like, yeah, let's have some fun. But we continue. We go with the NFC North now, Rick. I think this will be a bit more of an interesting division than most people think. The NFC North has been a one-team division for a while now, save for a few seasons here and there. But for the most part, it's been the Packers with Aaron Rodgers. And then before that, it was the Packers with Brett Favre. So for a long time, this division has known Green Bay to be big brother to everyone. And I think, spoiler, it'll probably remain that, but it's not going to be as overwhelming as it has been in years past, I feel. But before we get to our breakdown, of course, as we've done in the past, ladies and gentlemen, me and Rick have plenty of thoughts, but we have to get our guy in here. So I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to start with the Packers, and we're going to start with Justin's thoughts on Green Bay for 2022.
Listen, I think Aaron Rodgers is pissed. And the last time he was pissed, he had one of the best seasons of all time. Completion percentage-wise, he had 42 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. He went off. He's coming off his second MVP in a row. 4 total MVPs in this league. He's a surefire Hall of Famer. And the Packers have gone 13-3 the last 3 seasons. And there is no reason why they should not continue to dominate in this division. Like I said, I think the Vikings and the Lions have both improved. But last time I checked, Aaron Rodgers is still in Titletown, and he's not going to let up. He's not going to take his foot off the gas against these teams. I know that the Packers lost some help at receiver. I know that people are worried about their offensive line. I'm here to tell you everything is going to be fine in Green Bay, at least in the regular season. We'll worry about the playoffs where they've made a habit of kind of choking a little bit, but The Packers aren't going anywhere. They still have a really tough defense. They've addressed some of the defensive needs in free agency. They've addressed their receiving core in the draft, which I think in the second round, Christian is going to be an excellent receiver there. Aaron Rodgers just does something with these second round guys that they look like Hall of Famers while he's with them. I think the offensive line is going to be fine. They're going to be settled in, and Aaron Jones is going to run that ball down every team's throat. I listen, if you have a fantasy team and you're looking for some steals, look at the Packers, because they're going to be a really explosive offense this year, no matter who's there, even without Devontae Adams. I expect the Packers to stay right the course, absolutely be at least 12-5, 13-3. Anything less than that would be a disappointment. Anything less than that, I wouldn't necessarily guarantee the division, because like I said, I think the Vikings are going to benefit from an easy schedule and an improved roster. So I don't see them giving up any ground to any of these teams that are not there yet. I think the Packers are a legit contender, just as they always are. And every single year, no matter whether or not people think they got better or worse in free agency, the Green Bay Packers are a threat to win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers at the helm. He's one of those guys that we all always assumed would have at least multiple Super Bowls, and he hasn't gotten there yet. So every year I'm going to look for him to do that. He's a bad man. He's one of the most accurate, dominant quarterbacks we've ever seen. And yeah, Packers will probably take this year, and it's just a matter of what their seed is going to be. So Packers 13-3.
So there is Justin's analysis. I was getting him in here early. We have to bring
I can't wait for him to tell me why he hasn't scored the Packers Giants game at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, because 13-3 is not 13-4, 13-3-1 maybe. We'll go for that. Listen, he's right on some points. However, I'm gonna tell you something. Prepare to be disappointed in this Green Bay Packer team, for my money. I believe personally that losing Devontae Adams is one thing, but losing Devontae Adams, Equanimeous St. Brown, and Marcus Valdes-Scantling in the same year, to me, it's wild. It really is. And yeah, Aaron Rodgers finally got the receiver that he wanted 3 years ago when they drafted Jordan Love instead, but they got Christian Watson, who is prone to some drops. And I think his rookie year, there's going to be some problems with drops as well. So that might make them a little more one-dimensional with Aaron Jones running the ball. Granted, Aaron Jones is an excellent running back, don't get me wrong, but I think it's going to make them a little bit more one-dimensional. And I think the way that other teams have improved themselves, where Green Bay somewhat stayed pat, to me is some question marks there. I think the offensive line is going to be a bit of a problem for them. I think a guy like David Bakhtiari and guys like John Runyon Jr., they only got older. They're now going to have to face some really tough competition. I mean, look at it like this. If you're telling me in weeks 3 and 4 you're playing Tampa Bay and New England, and then you're going to London to play the Giants and then the Jets, to me it's a tough early schedule, and you don't even have to say that you're playing the Rams and the Bills and the Cowboys towards the end of the year. I think there's a lot of stumbling blocks, and I think for me it's also a case where Aaron Rodgers is going to take a step back. To Justin's point, they finished 13-3 in the last 3 years. They were 13-4. Something has to give, and I think this is the year that the form bends a little bit in Green Bay, and not in a positive way. So I do not think that Green Bay is going to be as good as everybody expects them to be, and I'm going to call sacrilege here, and you're gonna probably hate me for this, Jerg. Mason Crosby's going to miss a couple field goals that could win them the game. I think Mason Crosby's due for a rough year. So
I don't disagree with that.
I'm slinging mud at the kicker, so I figured you would just come after me like that. But
to be fair, so Mason Crosby's been off for a while, and I've just been waiting for them to replace him, but they just haven't. So there's that. So my thing with the Green Bay Packers, I think defensively, I think with part of the reason why Justin still has such a high faith in them is because I think they're going to shift towards what the mindset was really the first 2 years of Matt LaFleur. So if you remember, the last 2 seasons have been great from Aaron Rodgers, but the first couple of years with Matt LaFleur, he still had like 4,000 yards. He still had 20 plus touchdowns, low interceptions. But it wasn't what we've seen the last couple of years with Rodgers. What it was leaning on the running game and leaning on the defense. I think the defense got better this offseason. I know we're going to talk about them losing Zadarius Smith, but I think because of the impact that was made last season and the breakout that we saw from Rashawn Gary, you still have Preston Smith there. You have Kenny Clark, who you're pairing Jaron Reed with him along that defensive line, and Dean Lowry, the veteran, is still there. He's good for a couple sacks. I think they're set. Plus, you brought in some youngsters onto that team as well. Devontae Wyatt, I think, will be able to make an impact, can really help on the downs. They were able to maintain Devondre Campbell, which was a really big deal. And they added Quay Walker to the linebacking core. I actually think that Green Bay Packers defense really, I'm not going to say they got better, but that defense.
I think they held firm.
Yes, for losing Zadarius Smith, which people, like, you got to remember, the Packers didn't have Zadarius Smith for the entirety of last season. So this wasn't a case where they only missed him 3 games last year and they still played it. No, they played a whole season without Zadarius Smith on that team, and they still played really well last season, and they did their job in the playoffs. And I think this defensive backfield is still good. I have a lot of faith in Darnell Savage. Adrian Amos is a good player. Jair Alexander is one of the top 2-3 shutdown corners in the game. Like, you still have an amazing defense there. I think, to Justin's point, I think the idea will be Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon being that 1-2 punch in the backfield. Aaron Jones being that receiving option. A.J. Dillon, quad god of Green Bay, is just going to be running people over and probably, just destroying defenses along the way. Like, he's going to have a couple like 40, 50-yard runs where he just breaks like 3-4 tackles, because that's how swole this boy is, ladies and gentlemen.
Yes.
But I am with you, Rick. I think the concern of losing all those weapons at once, not so much with Equanimeous St. Brown, but with MVS and what he showed in flashes, and of course Devontae Adams being a number 1, I think it's going to put a lot of pressure on these kids, and not just Christian Watson, who Justin had mentioned, but also Romeo Doubs, who I believe we picked the Packers in our 3-round mock that we did a while back. So I think the two of them are going to have expectations right away. I think Amari Rodgers, who they got last season, I think he's year 2. It's weird to say, but he's kind of one of the quote unquote veterans of the team. You could consider that receiving core. Randall Cobb. Need I say more? You have week 1 Sammy Watkins, which that's going to help you in that week 1 game. Right. And then the tight ends, you hope that maybe Robert Tonyan, if he's able to come back from injury. Josiah DeGuara has been someone that I know Packers fans personally have had a lot of faith in him. At the end of the day, my only disagreement really with what you were talking about is I think like the offensive line hasn't been healthy for the last year and a half, and they've still been pretty good. You still got Elton Jenkins, who's been one of the more versatile offensive linemen in the game for the last couple of years. They have the young Josh Myers, who did a very good job last season in the interior. David Bakhtiari, him coming back is a big deal. They've missed him for what was that playoff run when they lost to Tampa and all of last season, essentially. Like, they've been able to get by without him. I think that him coming back is going to be a big deal. Is it maybe going to be slow going for the first couple of weeks? Sure. But I think that offensive line, at least left tackle wise, is healthier than what it's been the last year and a half. So I think there's things. I don't think they'll be a 13-win team. I'm also with you on that. But at least for me, they're still my pick to win the division. I'd say I haven't really given records, so this is my thing. But if I had to guess, I'd say 11-6 is a fair point for the I almost said Vikings, for the Packers this season.
I mean, I have them at 11-6 too, but I don't have them winning the division.
Oh.
So, look, here's my thing. I'm gonna go with what Rob Reichel, who contributed for Forbes, said about the wide receiving core. The Packers have a group that's either over the hill in Copper Watkins, mediocre in Allen Lazard, unproven in Amari Rodgers, or as rookies in Watson, Dobbs, and Samori Toure, I believe his name is. So, to me, that means you're going to be trying to get Mercedes Lewis, John Tonyan, or Eli Wolf a little more play on the tight end spectrum. I don't know. I mean, I look at their schedule and I look at the games that they have. There's a really gritty stretch. I'm not saying this because we all know who I'm picking for the NFC East title, but there's a really gritty stretch of 3 straight road games that they have to go on, where they go to Washington, then they go to Buffalo, then they go to Detroit, and then the very next week they welcome in Dallas. It's the schedule. I would normally say a team like Green Bay could potentially handle that, but I don't know. It's you're talking about 3 very tough games against 3 very tough opponents, 1 in your division, 2 in eastern locations and northeast locations that are outside. It could be snowing in Buffalo on Halloween weekend for all we know. And you got to see how they handle the snow. I mean, that could be a factor, And then the way that they end, coming out of the bye, they have LA coming to them, and then they go to Miami on Christmas Day. To me, and again, look, the Rams got better and the Dolphins got better. So to me, there's still question marks that I have that can, they really throw them for a loop. Are they talented? Absolutely. But I think there's things. Aaron Rodgers isn't getting any younger. I think the wide receiving core definitely decreased in value and in talent because they lost all the guys they lost. I get it. Equinemi St. Brown isn't the big name. Neither is MVS, but Devontae Adams is maybe a receiver and a half, and they probably only added 1 total receiver. I mean, sorry, Sammy Watkins, but your best years are behind you. And so, I just think, and also special teams, we talked about it. They were 32nd last year in special teams.
Yeah.
And their biggest loss is Corey Bojorquez, who is now punting for the Browns. They have a brand new punter.
Yeah.
That when you have a brand new punter on your team, that immediately signals 1 loss. So
you're not wrong.
No, I'm not. So like when the Jets went from Tom Tupa to whoever they went to after him, it was a guaranteed 2.5 losses after that, and they lost.
Mm-hmm.
Simple.
So. Yeah, I don't blame you. Again, like there are definitely play. I will say special teams. I think what their hope is. I believe they hired what was the name of the Raiders coach who took over last season? Bisaccia?
Oh, Bisaccia, yeah.
Bisaccia. They hired him to be their new special teams coach, which I think that was a massive get for them because he has experience as a special teams coach. So I think he could maybe try to balance out some of the loss that the Packers have there. I mean, I don't disagree with any of the points that you're making. I think the Packers, this is definitely not the same team that we have seen from previous years from the Green Bay Packers, obviously. Yeah. I think one thing that could aid them is that some of the games that you mentioned are happening later in the season, especially with the Rams and Dolphins games. And I think like there will be enough time to where you get a clearer picture of who some of these guys are and what some of their roles are. In part because you have to at that point, you have to know what Christian Watson's role in that offense is. You have to know if Romeo Doubs or Amari Rodgers can make an impact. So I think one thing that works for Green Bay later in the season is that these guys' roles will be a bit more defined by that point. And even like during that stretch that you mentioned, of course, because the offense, there's questions, but I'm still going to give them a puncher's chance against all those teams where I think a lot of the teams that we've gone through in our divisional breakdowns, we really are concerned when they have stretches like that. The Packers, it's not that there's no concern. There's always concern, but it's slightly less because at the end of the day, as long as 12 is there, they'll have a chance to win any of those games on paper. And because that's what we have to go with right now, I think that's why a lot of people, Justin especially, and also myself, I have them winning the division. I still give the Packers more than a benefit of the doubt because until I see him have a Peyton Manning type final season where it's 9 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, if Aaron Rodgers is there, I'm giving Green Bay a chance any given day.
I mean, again, like I said, one player can make a significant difference, and Aaron Rodgers is that type of player. To me, there's just a lot of stumbling blocks in his way, and I think he's also bitter that he didn't get the Jeopardy hosting job. So that's kind of that also plays into the fact a little bit too.
I mean, I feel like because of what that job, what happened with the job, you got to believe that when he retires, they're just going to give it to him, right?
No, absolutely not. He's not. He doesn't have the charisma for that job. As a game show host, as Justin can attest, as a game show host, you need to have a certain charisma and a certain affability and connection with the audience. When Mike Richards picked himself to host Jeopardy, he didn't have that connection with the audience, and then he got fired. So there you go. Aaron Rodgers doesn't have that connection, and that's why they parodied it on the State Farm commercials, where he's doing that. He doesn't have. He's more about he's a one-track mind, and that one-track mind is himself. Again, Aaron Rodgers, great. That's good for you. But for a game show host like Justin, gotta think about the world around you.
True. Yeah. I will say, when can we get Justin's name in the Jeopardy hosting pot?
Well, I don't know about Jeopardy per se, but I got to think that Wheel of Fortune's coming up to it at some point pretty soon because Pat Sajak's been there for 35, 40 years. And it's a pretty simple game show. You just got to deal with people and then watch as they call the same letter 4 times in a row for no reason.
Yeah. Or say the completely wrong word when you give them a chance to guess the whole thing.
Or the worst thing of all, the crossword puzzle. Have you seen the category, the crossword category?
Yeah.
On Wheel of Fortune? You can't use the word "and." You have to just say what's up. And he says it every single night. Say what's up there. Don't add anything. Go ahead. I'm like, that's in your sleep now, Pat. That is in your sleep that you're saying that constantly.
Oh, it's in his nightmare.
Yeah, it's terrifying.
To help us get Justin a game show hosting job, ladies and gentlemen. That'll just be. That would be perfect for us.
I once had a vision where back when I was in college that I reinstated the match game, and I was the Gene Rayburn of Hofstra University where I did that. I wanted to do that very badly. Then I realized that Hofstra television was very cliquey, so I had no desire to be involved in any of that stuff. So I figured, go with radio instead.
Yep, there we go, ladies and gentlemen. So moving on from the Green Bay Packers and our ambitions to make sure Justin becomes one of the most powerful hosts in America one day. We move on to the other teams in the division. You kind of said you have another team winning this division, Rick. I think let's just get straight to it. Let's go straight to the power players of this division who we think have the best odds. Of course, when it comes to Rick, I'm talking about he fully believes that the Detroit Lions are going to go 17-0 this season and that they're going to end up winning the Super Bowl. And they're just going to run the world, and Dan Campbell is going to eat everybody's kneecaps along the way. So, Rick, why are the Detroit Lions your division winner for this upcoming season?
I don't know about 17-0, but I feel so. I feel in a pretty significant way that I feel like the Detroit Lions improved considerably from what they were last year. And look, Detroit we know is stake bit, but if there's any program or any franchise that we've seen can arise from the problems of the past, Cincinnati did it last year. They made a Super Bowl after how many years of going to the playoffs and not making it? They haven't made a Super Bowl in 30 years. So Detroit added the right pieces, I think, to make them a much better team. I'm going to say it through gritted teeth, but Jameson Williams was an excellent draft choice by them. But it all starts with Aiden Hutchinson. And he's got that mindset, that mentality that he wants to bring this Lions team to prominence. And I think this is a team that's got excellent wide receivers, Williams among them. Amon-Ra St. Brown's really good. DJ Chark, who they added. They've also got an excellent tight end core, TJ Hawkinson. Devin Funchess, who's listed as a tight end. He was a wide receiver out of Michigan, so he's got the ability to make some cuts. And their defense, I think, got a lot better, too. I think, for the guys that they drafted along with Hutchinson to pair on that defensive line with a guy like Michael Brockers could be an excellent fit for them. And their linebacking core is solid, too. I think Romeo Okwara with his brother Julian Okwara could be sleepers for, a defensive all-pros. I think that they're an excellent, excellent team. Their secondary, you could question a little bit here and there, but I think the way with their ads with Kirby Joseph leading that secondary on the rookie, I think this is a very solid team. And I think Dan Campbell's got them in the right direction. I really do. I love Aaron Glenn on defense as their defensive coordinator. I love what he stands for. I love the way that he played the game, and I love the way he coaches his guys to get ready. And I think, it's a brand new offensive coordinator, sure, but they have a great QB coach in Mark Brunell, who's helping Jared Goff tremendously, and an excellent wide receiver coach in Antoine Randall L., who's really going to help Jameson Williams mold himself into a star wide receiver. Maybe not this year, he'll be a supporting cast member, but maybe next year he'll be a real star. So I think this is a very prominent Detroit team, and I think what helps them too is that they have, to me, an easier schedule, whereas Green Bay got Tampa Bay and Green Bay got the Rams. The Lions have the Seahawks and the Panthers. I think the odds are in their favor this year. So I'll spoil it right now. I have the Lions going 12-5 and winning the division. I think that they're an excellent team that's on the cusp of really making a big run. And I think that this is a team that's going to surprise a lot of people. And I think Dan Campbell's going to get those wins. So you got to think about last year. A lot of the losses that Dan Campbell had last year in his first year as head coach were like 1 or 2 bounces away from being, wins. The Baltimore Ravens loss was on a 66-yard field goal. They lost their first 8 games in a row, but they lost the Ravens by 2, the Vikings by 2, the Niners by 8, the Bears by 10. They had close ones. And even later on in the year, the Browns by 3, the Bears by 2, the Falcons by 4. So they were close. They've been close. So if 1 or 2 bounces just didn't go their way last year, I think this year the bounces start to fall their way because I believe the teams are more complete now. And I think it's going to really be a big key. This is a big step for Jared Goff. It really is, because the Lions see what Stafford did the first year that he left them. He won a Super Bowl. And now the pressure's on Jared Goff, and this is really where he's going to turn into that diamond, I think. I think Jared Goff's going to have a renaissance year because the wide receiving core is just that much better. And I feel like this is a good year for Detroit. I really do. And I mean, I know it's sticking my neck out there, but look, the last 3 weeks we've had, the same division winner all the time. Let's throw some chaos into the mix. And I think Detroit is just that right team to throw some chaos into the mix.
So I thought the Vikings were your division winner. I was screwing around last night when I thought the Lions were going to be your division winner, and now I did.
No.
Again, ladies and gentlemen.
No.
Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is, we've said it before, I'll say it again. We don't know what the other is going to say about teams. Yeah. I did not know legitimately that the Lions were Rick's division winner.
Yeah.
So that one,
absolutely.
That was, whew. That was a good one. First off, let me say, I'm not saying anything you said is wrong or incorrect. I did not know.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. Roster on this roster. I'm a big fan of the receiving core and the potential this receiving core has. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is great. DJ Chark, I think, is great. Jameson Williams, it depends on when he comes in and how effective he's going to be. But I think when he gets there, I think he'll show flashes of the impact he'll make. And I think talent-wise, this team vastly improved skill position. I think even when you look at the running back core of this team, DeAndre Swift is there, Jamal Williams is there, Jermar Jefferson, not a combination of Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson. No, it's Jermar Jefferson.
That would be a great pick.
Right. You can somehow pick a combo of those two. You got a good tight end core. An underrated offensive line, really. When you look at it, it really starts with Penei Sewell, who they had picked a couple years back because the Bengals decided to go with Jamar Chase. Penei Sewell and Taylor Decker being your bookend tackles on that team is big. Pieces are there for that offense to be good. I just ultimately, at the end of the day, I want to see what happens with Jared Goff, because you mentioned all the coaches there, Rick. I do like that coaching staff. I like what they can do. I just don't know if Jared Goff can be the guy for them to really bring them there. And that's just my big thing. And I know that there's the idea of what he could be, but I don't know. I'm not seeing this team making that kind of leap. I do see them making a leap. I definitely don't think they'll be one of the worst teams in the league next year. I think they are going to. I view them as what I viewed the Cardinals in Kyler Murray's end of his rookie year, beginning of his second year, where they're probably going to pick up a win or two that you didn't expect, and they're going to ruin a team in the standings. A team should have one more win than they should because the Detroit Lions were able to beat them. If I had to put a number on it, I would say 8 to 9 wins at least. I think that's my personal expectation for them. I think about 500, maybe even a game above would be big. If they go 8-1, that would just be phenomenal for me. But right. I definitely have those expectations of Detroit. Like you said, I think Aiden Hutchinson, it's going to be interesting to see him trying to prove people wrong, because I think the idea with Aiden Hutchinson, a lot of people, is high base, low ceiling. I think he's going to try early on to see if he can prove people wrong there. I think you have another young defensive end there in Eric Banks. You got some veterans like Brockers, who you mentioned. And I think that's a very young and underrated and talented defensive backfield. If Jeff Okudah could take that next step, because he got injured all last season, he had some rough moments, some good moments his rookie year. If year 3 he could prove to be this team's number one corner, I'm not saying a number one corner in the league, but if he could be their number one corner, I think that would be a big deal. And I think the defensive backfield, if they can take that next step as a whole, I think that we might see a few more of those surprises that you're talking about. Because I think if the defense on this team can really take that step, I think that would help Jared Goff a lot, and that would take some of the pressure off of him from what we could potentially expect. So
you know what the weird thing is about Jared Goff? For all the flack that he's gotten, and I mean, I get it, he was a number one pick. He's actually statistically not a bad quarterback. He's thrown 2 times as many touchdowns as interceptions. Sure, you want it to be a little bit higher, but he also hasn't played a full season in 2 years. He played 15 games in his last year with the Rams and 14 with the Lions last year. So we haven't seen what a full year of Jared Goff could look like. And it could be 4,000, 4,250. And last year he threw 19 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. That was his best ratio because, he's a guy that doesn't make the best decisions, but you saw the improvement start to come in as he learned under this Lions offense. I think one of the big things, too, is that, you mentioned the tackles for Detroit. I got to give love to the center, Frank Ragnow. This is a 2-time Pro Bowler from Arkansas, who's one of the best young centers in the game, I think.
Yeah.
To have him kind of anchor that line with Sewell and with Decker and with their guards too, Tommy Kramer as well, Logan Stenberg is there too. This is a team that, like I said, I think the realistic thing is 8 to 9 wins. But to me, I'm hitching my wagon to it. When I did my whole list of like the wins losses thing, I'll be honest, I have them beating Green Bay. I have them splitting with Green Bay. So I have them at least taking one game from Green Bay, and then I think the way the rest of their schedule plays out, this is a team that, like you said, they could surprise people. I think the fact of the matter is that it really helps them. They got an easier schedule in a way, because if you think about it, Miami's coming to them. If you think about it, Buffalo's coming to them. I'm not going to say they're going to beat Buffalo, but Jacksonville's coming to them. So there's something to be said about home advantage. And I think Dan Campbell's the right head coach and the right mindset for this team to make that step forward. He to me is what Zach Taylor was in Cincinnati. He was a fresh face, a change of perspective. It took Taylor a few more years, but again, before last year, Burrow was hurt. In his first year, he was hurt. Otherwise, Burrow could have been a star in year 1. Year 2, they go to the Super Bowl. Dan Campbell, I think the pieces are there. I think he's the right head coach for it. So like I said, it's maybe belief in a team that's one more year away, but I think you strike now because Green Bay, to me, they're just Green Bay. Detroit is this exciting, flashy Detroit. I'm going to use my cars here. Detroit is that new Ford Bronco truck that's exciting and flashy, and you're like, I want to get that. Whereas Green Bay is like the 3-4 year old model of the Honda CR-V. It's like, it's nice, but I want something different. I want to be flashy. So
it's only right when you talk about the Lions, you have to compare them to a Ford vehicle, of course.
Detroit, obviously, yes, muscle cars.
Yeah. So Rick has his thoughts, hotter than the radiator spewing steam in the background of the episode. I have my thoughts. Justin's going to have his thoughts next week when he reacts to this. I think we need to let Justin react to all this next week. But for now,
let's eliminate. Yeah.
Going into this episode, what was Justin's thoughts on the Lions for 2022?
The Detroit Lions. I expect them to be a much more improved team this year. They have the benefit of being in one of the easier divisions, in my opinion. They do get to play the Vikings, who I actually think are going to be pretty good this year, and the Bears twice. Unfortunately, they do also play Aaron Rodgers twice, but I think they should benefit from having an easier schedule. They play a lot of weaker teams such as Carolina, Jacksonville. I believe they play Seattle as well. And I really like what they're building up there. I really like Dan Campbell as a head coach. It was easy to make fun of him when he was talking about biting kneecaps, but listen, these are guys that want to play for him, and they do their best, and they play their best football when he's on the field. So they've been building on both the offensive and defensive line, which is, I'm a trenches guy myself, and I really do believe that they're building something in Detroit. I have them going 7-10 this year. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, but I expect a greatly improved roster and a greatly improved team, and they're actually going to have to trade up in my way too early mock draft for next year, because they're going to go after quarterback after Jared Goff's contract is up. Obviously, I don't think he goes back there. So look for the Lions to be 7-10 this year, and on their way to having a much better team, and maybe a little hope in Detroit. We'll see. Let's see what Aiden Hutchinson can bring to the table this year. It's going to be exciting times in Detroit.
So, I mean, all consensus for hope for them. He's got them down for 7 wins. I got 8 to 9. Rick says 12. I have to me that means 17-0. So we
again to just throw a little wet damp cloth on Justin's thought there. This quarterback class coming out next year, if they really want to get a quarterback, they don't have to trade up. They can wait, because the way the quarterbacks are shaking out, there's been some mocks where Bryce Young and CJ Stroud don't go until the latter head of the top 10, and then you still got Spencer Rattler there and like the later picks potentially. So if they really want a quarterback that badly, which I get, because David Blau and Tim Boyle don't exactly instill confidence in me, but I think this is going to be the year where Jared Goff gets that extension and makes himself proves himself to be a huge quarterback. So that's what I think.
Well, will be interesting to see. And if Detroit does fall in love with him and maybe it does go with Jared Goff, I mean, who knows? Crazier things have happened in this league, I think. So we'll see. We'll see what the future holds. But definitely, Detroit fans that are listening to us, we believe that your team's going to be a hell of a lot better this year. Which I think for the Lions, like if even aside, like even let's say they fall short of the 12 wins, right? If we tell a Lions fan, hey, you should expect 8 wins from your team this year,
they'll be over the moon. Over the moon.
Especially because like I'm not sure if it'll happen, but I think a more than realistic shot that they could split with Green Bay, like that in and of itself.
Keep in mind, this is the team. This
You're good now.
Yeah. No. Listen. I agree with you immensely, and I think this is a franchise that has been under the throes of flirting with 0-16 for many years. They were 0-16 at one point recently. So to tell them they have 8 wins, 9 wins, 12 wins, they'll go crazy for it. They really will.
It's interesting times in Detroit, and it's good for them that they'll be able to have that faith. 2 teams left, one with higher expectations than the other, I would assume. So let's just get the other one out of the way right now. Chicago Bears. I think it's pretty obvious for this one, Rick. I think like I've made this point with a couple teams so far. You're really player watching for them now. I think the whole point is just to see what Justin Fields looks like in year 2 for his career, in year 1 for Matt Eberflus, and what that offense can do. I think that's the number one thing. The receiving core leaves a lot to be desired, to say the very least. Maybe some guys that could perform decently, like they have veterans in Pringle and Pettis. You got the young guy in Daz Newsome there. You have David Montgomery as the running back, who, like, if Eberflus is able to use him better than Matt Nagy, which is not a tall task at all to ask for.
For sure, yeah.
They'll be able to do that. So a lot of interesting things, to say the least, about this team. And a couple of pieces on the defense. You had them as a winner for the draft because they did make some smart selections. But I think like you're probably in the consensus here, and we'll get to Justin as well in a moment. But I think the Bears, it's looking like a rough 2022 for Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think what Chicago did, the reason why I had them really as a winner is because they took the best players that were available to them at the time to help fill the needs that were on the defensive side of the ball. Because I think if you were the Bears and you were looking at your draft pick, and you only had 2 picks in the second round to start off with, you knew you weren't going to get a top offensive talent. You were really going to have to settle for defense. And that's the hallmark of the Chicago Bears, is a very strong defense. They added an excellent core. They added Kyler Gordon, Jaquan Brisker. I like the Dominique Robinson pick in the 5th round for them. But you can't win games without scoring any points. And so I also hold strong to my full belief that they should not start Justin Fields until week 3. Trevor Siemian should start the first 2 games and see what they got. But I will give you what I believe is a little bit of a best case scenario, spoiler prediction surprise in a way for them. Their rookie wide receiver, Velus Jones, is going to have 800 yards and 8 touchdowns this year, I think, for them. Because, like you said, the wide receiving core leaves a lot to be desired, but Velus Jones is an older rookie at 25, so he knows that the time on the clock for him is not exactly good, not exactly ready. And in training camp so far, he's been a guy that's shown to have a lot of speed and a lot of great pass-catching ability. So I think he's going to become Justin Fields' favorite target after week 3 very quickly on. This team is very good on defense. I mentioned their secondary. Their linebacking core with Robert Quinn and Roquan Smith are very, very good. But I do agree that I think it's just going to be, right now is not the time for Chicago. I think it's going to be a tough year for them. I think that they're going to be the proverbial punching bag of this division. I think they'll get a couple wins here and there, but I don't see and I know the super fans out there, Bill Swirsky and the super fans from the SNL days are going to say Chicago's 17-0 winning the Super Bowl this year. Love Justin Fields, but no, I don't see it for you. I really don't. I'm sorry, but this is not going to be a good team this year.
The throwback reference right there is just Amazing. That being said, let's see what Justin had to say about the Bears as well, because I think for the most part we've said our piece about them. Interested to see what Justin's thoughts were. Justin, did you talk about Justin Fields?
I have a question this year for Bears fans. How much time are you willing to give Justin Fields? Because if he doesn't look good, or he has similar stats as last year, how long are you going to wait before you decide, hey, maybe it's time for another quarterback in Chicago? I see them having another rough year this year. I think they're going to be worse than they were last year, which is saying a lot because they weren't great last year. I do like the coaching move by them. I think they'll really try to reinforce that defense, but they haven't really done anything to help out Justin Fields. He wasn't great last year. He had, what was it, like 3 or 4 touchdowns and 11 interceptions in his short tenure. I can't put it all on him. I mean, the play calling and game planning was terrible. They didn't have a lot of protection. They didn't have a lot of weapons, but they didn't really address a lot of that this year. I mean, maybe they addressed the coaching and the scheming, but their offensive line, in my opinion, is still in shambles. He's going to be running for his life. They're going to rely on his ultra-athletic ability, which he's got a lot of, but there's only so many guys that could do that in this league. So I don't really expect Justin Fields to take another step forward this year. I expect them to, be at the bottom, probably a top 10 pick this year. And in a strong quarterback class, are you giving Justin Fields another year after two different head coaches and not a lot shown on the field? I expect the Bears to be, hovering around 4-13 this year. They could even be a top 5 pick. I do not like where things are heading in Chicago. And Bears fans, don't at me, man. You should be worried. I don't see a lot coming over there. Good luck.
So I'm gonna signals by Justin about Justin Fields to the Bears fans.
Yeah.
I can't really disagree. I think the question will be, what is the thought process of Justin Fields? Because now that's not the GM that got him. That's not the head coach that originally had him. Granted, Matt Nagy kind of didn't really act like he wanted him to begin with when he sent him, threw him to the wolves of the Cleveland Browns, defensive line, and just let him absolutely get his head taken off. So we'll see. But interesting questions being brought up. I hope for good things for Justin Fields personally, because I think his selection was big because they traded up for him, and I think a lot of people always point to guys as bust. Although I think slowly we're getting more people adding context, and I think the context of you think of what the just utter disaster that previous regime was now at the end, and this one I hope Justin Fields doesn't get a chance, to say the very least. I hope he does. I hate when guys don't get fair chances at the end of the day. But of course, it's a wait and see in Chicago, to say the very least, with them.
I think quickly, just for me, there was a ranking that came out recently about the NFL coaches ranked worst to best, or not worst to best, but the 32. They were the bottom rank is called stuck in the mud. Mm-hmm. Lovie Smith was at the bottom of that. Matt Eberflus was right above him at 31. But again, this is a new regime. This is a new GM, a new head coach. It's a new crew. And it might take them a year or two to kind of get set. Now, I think adding a quarterback could be interesting because of how much money they committed to Peterman and Simeon as well. But it might be a case where they might make a move if Fields doesn't work out, see what you can get for him, and maybe add some more picks, because this looks like a pretty good class coming out. So, yeah. But I agree.
And it's also not to say that you can't get any value out of Justin Fields also at some point. It will be interesting to see how he plays in this. Man, that offense just does not look good. I like listening to Justin talk about it when he said 4 wins. I'm like, well, I was like, 4 wins. But then I thought about it, it's every division has to have a team that could be that low. And I thought about the Bears. I'm like, you know what? He might be right. He might very well be right. So that is the analysis of the Chicago Bears. One team remains, and we're going to try not to miss the mark here, like their field goal kickers tend to do in the playoffs. But we have the Minnesota Vikings here to end things off. So by process of elimination, Rick, the Vikings are your 3rd seed in this division. And of
that
course,
is correct.
We will do it formally for the people at the very end. But you have the Vikings as your 3rd seed. I'm going to assume Justin has them as his 2nd seed. Why
don't we hear from the man?
Guessing. I was just about to say. let's see. I mean, I don't know if he'll say it explicitly here, but Justin, start the dialogue for us on the Minnesota Vikings for 2022.
Minnesota. We're going to the playoffs this year, all right, Minnesota? Be happy. You know, they had a rough go of things last year. Kirk Cousins obviously is not a primetime guy. They always have a lot of injuries, but I think Minnesota did a good job of getting a little bit younger this year. You know, they still have those excellent weapons, Dalvin Cook, Adam Thielen, Justin Jefferson, obviously. They have some good young players that are also going to be in skill positions that can really contribute. And, they've really done their best to make that defense a little younger. So they have a lot of great veterans with some young, talented players there. I really think that they're going to benefit from an easier schedule. And people don't realize they lost like 5 or 6 games last year by 1 score. I believe it was the most in the NFL. It was close. They are a couple of good plays away from really being a playoff team last year. They were in the hunt late in the game. And again, I think they improved this year. They're going to have an easier schedule. They were 4-2 in their division. Look for Minnesota to be, 9-8, maybe even 10-7 this year, coming out of the NFC North as one of my wild card teams with the Saints. So Minnesota, big things are happening. A little bit ahead of the Detroit Lions, but I still don't think you're going to get that division yet. You still got a nasty guy up over in Wisconsin that's not going to give you any help.
So there's the analysis there. I don't necessarily blame him. I think a big reason for the belief in Minnesota is now that Kevin O'Connell has taken the reins. I think, yes, that there's been talent there under Mike Zimmer, but I think the idea is that Kevin O'Connell can still unlock something in what that offense can do. And when you have the weapons of Justin Jefferson, you have Adam Thielen, you have Dalvin Cook there, worse quarterbacks can perform well. And I think Kirk Cousins is good enough to really do something there. And you also have the potential at tight end, because if he can come back and if he can be healthy, I believe Irv Smith Jr. can make a difference in this offense. I think he could have a pretty good season for them. And then you have a pretty good offensive line overall. I think Brian O'Neill and Kristen Darisaw are good pieces. Ezra Cleveland being there. Garrett Bradbury is a good center. There's pieces there. I think the defense would be the question for a lot of people, because I think, kind of similar to the Lions, I think there are some really young pieces there. But I think overall the idea is that just it's not time yet for Detroit. I think this is the mindset. It's not Detroit's time yet. They still need another year. Chicago is just not looking good. Green Bay, for Green Bay purposes, is number 1, and Minnesota can easily slot into that number 2. So I don't blame the logic, because that is also my logic essentially. But Rick, why do you have them as your 3rd seed overall? Because this is the biggest differentiation in our NFC North standings.
So look, I'll start off by saying this: I love Kevin O'Connell. I loved him as a player at San Diego State as their quarterback. I thought he was an excellent piece to their team. My biggest issue with this is a lot of the things that you said, Jerk, and a lot of the things that we're hearing about Minnesota, they're all precluded by one teeny little 2-letter word: if. If Irv Smith comes back and is fully healthy. If they take a step forward. If Christian Darrisaw is a better tackle. If Garrett Bradbury. If Everett Cleveland. If. The problem is that there's so many ifs for Minnesota that they have to try and overcome that it's, to me, next to impossible, I think. I think this is going to be a tough year for Minnesota. I think they're going to underwhelm. Now, I do want to ask you this, Jurgen, and this is kind of a little, not a trivia question, but I want to see if you can guess. Pro Football Focus ranked the rosters of all the 32 of the NFL teams. Where do they rank Minnesota, do you think, for roster base? Based on the talent on the roster, where do you think they rank them?
See, I feel like it could be a trick question, because there's some really talented players there, but there's also guys. I'll say they're middle of the pack. I'll go 16. I'll say smack down in the middle.
19th.
Close.
And this is the reasoning behind it. It's hard to feel all that confident about Minnesota's offensive line heading into the 2022 season, given that they ranked 27th as a unit in pass blocking. You have Kirk Cousins, right?
Yeah. Kirk
Cousins like to throw the ball around, right?
Yeah.
Well, why did Kirk Cousins now get the nickname as the check down merchant? Because in the first or second down, if that offensive line gets beaten by a bigger defensive line, a faster defensive line, and they came with the ball forward, you're talking about a 3rd and 18 where you're running a draw or just a check down and get more yards to punt. Or if you're pressured so much, you can only throw to a running back who just got out of the flat, and maybe you get 5 yards or 6 yards, maybe. If the offensive line gives Kirk Cousins time, maybe it can work. But this is a team that needs to really step up and needs to really get that going. Christian Darrisaw to me is trending towards bust territory, and I'm really sorry to say that, but there was talk of him when there was his draft going in the top 12, and he went 23. To me, there's a possibility on a trend that he could slip and become a bust. And look, I gave Frank Ragnow credit. I'm going to give Garrett Bradbury credit too. I think Garrett Bradbury is an excellent center, but when you compare the two careers, right, Ragnow's been to 2 Pro Bowls, Bradbury's been to none so far. So that to me is a pretty stark difference. Is Minnesota good on defense? Absolutely. I think their secondary is phenomenal. I think Harrison Smith is one of the top safeties in the game. I think they added Lewis Seen, and I think that makes them a better secondary as well. I think Zadarius Smith, stealing him from the Packers, is an excellent, excellent pick and an excellent choice by them. Dalvin Tomlinson's a very good defensive lineman, but there are so many question marks that everything you can it's not a case where you can say for certainty one thing is going to happen. It's if this happens, this will happen. If this happens, this will happen. So to me, that's why there's so many question marks, and that's why I don't think I have the flip. I have Minnesota going 7-10 this year in my rankings. I have the flip just because I think there's so many question marks and there's so many ifs. There's also been talk about them getting Eric Ebron. So all the talk about Irv Smith coming back and being a big guy on your offense could be shot if the Vikings say, hey, Eric Ebron, here's a 3-year contract for $25 million. Come play with us. So I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where it's just a major question mark, and I think it's going to be a tough first year for Kevin O'Connell. They will have some good games, and I looked up their schedule. They had 8 losses last year by 1 score. The only other loss they had on the schedule was a blowout against Green Bay. They were close in all their games, but can you honestly say that if you look at the teams they're playing this year, that the teams that they're playing haven't gotten better? They go play New Orleans in London. They play at Miami. They host Indianapolis, who got Matt Ryan, with Michael Pittman and Mo Alley Cox. To me, there's just too many variables going against the Vikings to really be as excited as Justin is. Look, be excited because you're not Chicago, but don't be as excited as Justin is for this team.
Right. And I think you bring up a good point. I think of all the schedules we've kind of spoken about, I think they're not facing the top tier teams like Green Bay is, but they are facing that. I think next tier, you kind of mentioned some of those teams. And I think for if you go to the second tier, if you want to try to argue the Vikings being a second tier team, you pick I think you pick almost every second tier team before Minnesota. So I think that's one of the reasons. I don't blame your logic at all. I also think even if they make it in the wild card, I think a big proponent of that is because just look at the NFC overall. I mean, aside from the NFC West, it's very much wide open in terms of you have to, because the Seahawks are so bad this year, and we still aren't sure about the Cardinals. The NFC West, they could have 2 of the wild card spots. That's the thing. So then you're looking at all the other divisions and which team will have that other wild card. And we went over the NFC South. We don't have them as that. The NFC East, will we have 2 playoff teams from there? Who knows? I mean, I think we all have a challenge for the NFC East, and I think we're all going to have some fun with that once we get to that division.
Oh yeah.
But I think with the Minnesota Vikings, it's I think part of the mindset, I want to say this is part of Justin's mindset for them, is that because I don't have that. My thing is that I don't have all my wild card teams set personally right now because I still have to look at all the teams as a whole. So while Minnesota on paper for me is my second place in the North, I don't necessarily have them as one of my wild card teams at the moment because I still need to look at. We still have 2 more divisions to go over, and again, for me, I think the thing that holds them back is in that second tier. I think the Vikings are closer to the bottom of the second tier teams in this league. And at the end of the day, it could be a case where if they do make the playoffs, it's because other teams collapse. And like we just talked about, like two of the divisions may only have, or three of the, no, at least two divisions may have just one team out of it. So
yeah,
it's
I'm gonna stake a prediction July 2nd, 2022, because they play each other this year.
Mhm.
The winner of Minnesota and Arizona is a wild card team. Like, because I think that's going to be, you mentioned the Cardinals, but I think the Niners could be in a lot more trouble in the West too. And that's down the line.
Right.
We'll talk about them, but I think they're in a lot more trouble too. But I feel like you want to talk about like second tier. If the Vikings want to be in that top of the second tier, you've got to beat Arizona and you've got to beat New Orleans. But I don't see it. I don't, because I just think that there's so many people that need to take a step forward on this team that, like, if you were to tell me, oh, two guys need to step up, fine. Like four even, okay, we can handle that. But this is like 8 or 10 guys that need to take a step forward.
Half your starters.
Half your starters have to step forward. It's just, it's not,
No, yeah, I don't blame you at all. Like what you're saying is that, like, compared to a lot of the other teams, and some people may try to poke the holes for you, Rick, where you have the Lions, who some people would say they need a lot of stuff to go their way. I think the big difference is that Detroit, they have the element of surprise if this stuff happens. Minnesota doesn't have the element of surprise. Like you mentioned what the stats were. I think the interesting thing was last season is like they're a terrible pass blocking team, but they're actually a good run blocking team. So they need to fix something in that. And could it happen where they somehow become a better pass blocking team, but their run blocking takes a step back? And if their run blocking takes a step back, Dalvin Cook not being as effective as he can be is not good for Kirk Cousins either. So it's so many different situations for Minnesota, which is why I don't blame you at all for having them where you have them. So we'll finalize it now for the people before we finish things off here. So for me personally, I have the Packers as my number 1 seed. I normally don't do records, but if I had to give one here, I'd say 11-6, maybe 12-5 for Green Bay, but Packers are my number 1. Minnesota is my number 2. I think they still have at least the veteranship for them for one more year above Detroit is my slight edge for them. So I have them at number 2. Detroit is my number 3, and Chicago is my number 4. Very similar to Justin. I would say probably Chicago 5-12, and Detroit 8-9 wins. Maybe if things kind of don't go their way, maybe 7 wins. But I think 7-9 is their range for me personally. Rick, yours?
Detroit number 1, 12-5. They win the division. Green Bay 11-6. I believe that I have them as a wild card team, but I think I have 3 teams as 11-6 that are second place in their division. So yeah, they'll be a wild card team. Where they fall, I have to look at where my rankings go, because that could be big for playoff matchups. Where Aaron Rodgers goes to. Minnesota 7-10, Chicago 4-13. I think, it's a rough year for the Bears.
Yeah. And so we have that, and of course, even though we kind of gave it along the way, Justin, close us out with the NFC North, your division breakdown for them.
I know I gave my records in my previous videos, but I don't care because we have to do a wrap-up video every week. I got to learn from Rick. He's much better at these videos than I am, but we'll see. Hopefully I don't have to do too many more of them. I like to be there in person as opposed to, out on the road. But listen, the NFC North, I don't think much is going to change. The Vikings will be a fringe playoff team. They're going to be, like I said, hovering around that double-digit win mark. I don't know if they get there, but if they do, I think they're a sure wild card spot, in my opinion. The Packers will continue to dominate. The only change I see is maybe a flip of those bottom 2 teams. Look at the Lions start to, gain a little bit of momentum, especially towards the end of the year. I think that they're really going to pick up steam, and they really love playing for Dan Campbell out there in Detroit. And Bears fans, things are going to get better before they get worse. I'm sorry, things are going to get worse before they get better. Excuse me. And listen, as much hope as you may have in Justin Fields, it's not unheard of for teams to say, listen, this is not the guy I drafted. There's a new GM. There's a new coach. I didn't see enough to keep this kid on the field. We're going into a strong quarterback draft with a lot of draft capital and a high draft pick. Maybe they move on. Maybe Justin Fields is out of there. So look for them to be, really testing him in Chicago. And, hey, maybe they'll turn him into a little bit of draft capital. I know there's a couple teams out there still looking for quarterbacks. If someone's willing to give up a lot of first-round picks, or at least one first-round pick, you might have to accept it if Justin Fields doesn't get off to a hot start. So Chicago, last place. Detroit coming on strong, around 8 wins. Minnesota, 9 or 10. And the domination continues. Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers, 13-4 minimum.
So
minimum 13-4. Wow.
Minimum. Wow. So what is the maximum? Who knows? We'll let Justin say whatever he wants to say about it when he returns to us next week, coming back from the mountains of Pennsylvania,
right,
doing whatever he is doing. We legitimately have zero idea what he's doing.
No idea. No clue.
He probably said it, but I just don't remember. Life is a blur sometimes.
It's some kind of festival going on, I think. It's a gathering of the Justins, if you will, in Pennsylvania, I believe.
You think he'll see Justin Fields there? If it's a gathering of the Justins?
I tend to say maybe because I feel like the Bears training camp, they might have like a training camp workout in Pennsylvania or something like that. I don't know. Something random, but probably close enough.
Maybe. Hey, if he could get an exclusive interview with Justin Fields, that'd be awesome.
Oh, yeah, that'd be good. Yeah,
we'll see. So boots on the ground for the Sports Engines Chaos podcast, ladies and gentlemen. We'll see what we can do. And maybe everything we said was just completely wrong, and we have absolutely no idea what anybody's doing out there. So that wraps up this week's division, ladies and gentlemen. The NFC North, the case is closed there. 4 divisions down, 4 more to go. We continue that next week. But we got one more segment, ladies and gentlemen. It was not the main event. We know what the real main event is. We know why you're here. Rick's review / rant of the week. I've said it before, I'll say it again. I'm not going to waste any more time. Rick, this is yours. Take it away. What are we reviewing / ranting about this week? And if it's multiple topics, have at it. Let's go.
Well, you've inspired me to do an Olympic podium. Unfortunately, on the table where I am, there was a pack of Uno cards. So my number 3 rant of the week goes to the cleaning people at my job, because yesterday I was there all by myself wanting to get so much work done, and they spilled damn noxious liquid and had to leave the office for an hour. So I had to rush to get my work done towards the end. You have one job. Don't spill any, fluids that could cause me to have my eyes burn or choke out while I'm working there by myself. One job. That's what you have. So that is my number 3 rant of the week. It's short, it's sweet, to the point, very simple. I was tossing up, though, between 1 and 2. My number 2 rant of the week goes to the NBA free agent draft class right now that we have. Where is your loyalty to all the franchises that have currently got you on their team? All you want is the money, money, money. Kevin Durant, this goes out to you. I hope you never play in the NBA again. You have no loyalty to any franchise whatsoever. Kyrie Irving, the earth is round, you fool. The earth is freaking round. Stop it. Enough. That is my number 2 rant of the week. And then my number 1 rant of the week, Taco Bell. Really? You want to put a giant Cheez-It in your tostadas or your Crunchwrap Supremes? A Cheez-It? A giant one? Didn't we just talk last week about not doing any of the fried foods or any of the fast foods? I had my appendix taken out. I didn't survive to go get a Cheez-It tostada from Taco Bell. I don't want it. I don't want anybody who wants it. If it's a cult classic, that ain't a cult I want to be a part of. So there you go. Taco Bell, you are the number 1 rant of the week. Get a life. Make different ingredients. Choose something better, healthier, and stop it right now. Enough.
Oh my god! I thought you were gonna rip off their slogan. It's like, get better ingredients, get better food. Taco Bell. Come on.
Ooh, damn. I didn't think about that, but that worked out too. That really worked out a lot better. Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Oh, that was amazing. Oh,
I got spicy, much like the Taco Bell cheese tostada. Got spicy.
Oh, sweet Lord above. That was absolutely amazing. We got some basketball in the show too. I think that was the first time basketball really made its appearance for the show. Katie and Kyrie got you.
I mean, I'm not a Brooklyn Nets fan by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not, but at the same time, isn't this the reason why you guys came here to talk about culture and to really just make things? To me, it's just like you just lied to the people to get more money. So and again, the Earth is round. We've been to space. We've seen the Earth. It's round.
No, you know what the funniest part about the whole Katie Kyrie thing is, Rick? Is that allegedly they're not against still playing with each other, but on another team because they feel the Nets have disrespected them. And the Nets have literally been to the whim for everything that they've won.
Sure. I'm sorry. James Harden got traded, and therefore you feel disrespect about getting the ball more often. Sure. Okay.
Like they got the head coach they wanted. They traded Jarrett Allen in that Harden deal because they wanted DeAndre Jordan starting, which I think we've seen enough proof. DeAndre Jordan is no longer a starting center in this league, but even a playable center in this league. I don't know why the Denver Nuggets got him, but to each his own.
I don't know.
That's wild.
But I do also want to give one quick shout out for a team that I think deserves the praise. The U.S. men's Olympic soccer team qualified for the 2024 Olympics. It's their first time qualifying for the Olympics since 2008. I give them a little more props, a little more applause for that.
Yeah. So
great. Like those are the stories we like.
Yes,
that's what we enjoy, not all this other stuff that I have to rant about constantly. We enjoy the rants, but not the topic of the rants. Is one thing.
Yeah. Hey, we had the rants, and we also had a quick review there for the U.S. men's soccer team, which big news for them, and hopefully they could translate that and maybe get some success in the Olympics and in the World Cup when the time comes around for that.
Absolutely, I think that'd be great. That'd be great for them.
We'll see. Hopefully, I hope personally, like mainly because of his last name, Christian Pulisic is able to take that next step, and if he could really become a superstar for the USA on an international stage, that would just be awesome.
I think that'd be great. That'd be great for them. It really is. They have a tough group in the World Cup, but I think that'll be interesting for them to see how they do.
Yeah, so. I think. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's top two teams in each group advance, right?
Yes.
The
way that it shakes out too is that since they're in Group B, if they finish ahead in the top of Group B, they play the second place team in Group A, which to me, I'm going to look at the groups right now because I have the ability to do that. That would be playing either Qatar, Ecuador, Senegal, because the Netherlands are probably finishing top in that group.
Oh yeah.
So you want to finish number one. I mean, Senegal could surprise. 20 years ago, they went to the final 8, which was interesting. But you want to finish in the top of Group B because then you get a much easier draw and a pathway to the final 8 by playing Ecuador or Senegal, I think. But
who else is in USA's group again?
England, Iran, and Wales.
I think they should get second.
I think second is the expected result. I think England has had some trouble in Euro competition lately, so they might be a little hungrier. And I love Wales now. I didn't love them before, but I love Wales now. Aside from Gareth Bale, they've got a couple good pieces, but I don't know. The thing, honestly, though, that's kind of scary is that Iran is 23rd in the world. So they're not a slouch. This isn't like them playing, the Cook Islands or Mozambique, if you will. Kazakhstan, yes. The Iranian national football team is a really, really good Asian national football team. I think they compete for the Asian Cup on a regular basis. So it's not the group of death, but it's a really, really strong group. I think
it's the group of trepidation.
Yes. I think group of death, honestly, is Group G. It's Brazil, Serbia, Switzerland, and Cameroon.
Ooh.
Yeah. That is a monster group, although Group H is Portugal, Ghana, Uruguay, and South Korea. And South Korea, while they're not maybe known for being a strong team, they did knock out Germany 4 years ago. So, I mean, there's that. So it's going to be really interesting when these games happen in, check my notes here, November and December.
FIFA corruption, ladies and gentlemen. And that's how we end this week's episode of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Technically, we still talked football, just international football. So
we did, yeah.
There we have it for the people. Ladies and gentlemen, as we always say, thank you so much for joining us. Another fantastic episode. Justin's absence, Absence makes the hearts grow fond. Everyone will love to see him back next week. We'll have trivia. We'll have Would You Rathers. We'll have another division to go after. I think I know the division we're gonna talk about next week, so it's gonna be fun. It was an amazing episode. Of course, we were not alone this week between me and Rick. We had Sandoval who joined us, who absolutely crushed it in trivia, by the way. So I think Sandoval needs to return for future trivias, by the way, Rick. I think we need him in
I'll speak to his agent. I'll see what the deal is with that. Yeah, we'll definitely make that work.
We will work out a contract to make sure Sandoval is on the show on a more regular basis, ladies and gentlemen.
Yep. Sounds good.
And at the end of the day, yes, going over the division, we have another one next week, and we had some fun with the rent, and we even talked a little bit of soccer. That could almost be like an ending segment where we talk about another sport for like 5 minutes.
Absolutely. Wimbledon's happening, so
Yeah, add a little bit more fun to it. Why not? And it could be something teaching us, because I'm still very much learning soccer constantly, and I wouldn't mind us talking about it more at all, because I think it would just be a fun time. So we'll see how that works up, ladies and gentlemen. But once again, thank you all so much for joining us. As we always say here at the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, we're here to have some fun. We're here to talk some football, and we're here to spread just a little bit of chaos along the way. Thank you all so much for joining us on this 4th of July weekend. Please have fun. Please stay safe. And remember, we will always be back next weekend.
And remember one thing: don't Jason Pierre-Paul yourself.
Enjoy, people.